So welcome. I think everybody's here, right? Yeah, almost one person missing. So today we will introduce the respiratory system, and it's one of the systems that I really like a lot because, in fact, it's something that makes you feel good. I mean, if you have clean lungs, if you can breathe fresh air, it's really something that makes us healthy. It makes us feel good. And on the other hand of the coin, on the other side of the coin, I think the respiratory system is also something really, really scary. Because, I mean, if you have a disease of the digestive system, okay, your belly hurts and everything, it's not fun at all. But if you're ill of the respiratory system, in fact, it makes you very much afraid. If you are short of breath, it's very annoying. It's very scary to have respiratory problems. And I think today, the respiratory system is one of the most important systems that we will see, I believe, especially because of what's happening now with coronavirus. And not only with coronavirus, guys, because our respiratory systems, it's something that gets completely destroyed and gets completely affected. And that makes me really angry. Not of our free will, okay? The thing with the digestive system is, okay, you eat unhealthy food. I mean, you can control it. It's your choice, you know. You can eat healthy or you cannot eat healthy, okay? You have more or less control, not 100%, of course, because there's also people that always eat healthy and they also might have some kind of cancer. There is exceptions, but basically, problems of the digestive system is something that you can largely avoid by having a proper diet. And with the respiratory system, you have no choice. I think the respiratory system is not that much voluntarily, you know. Your respiratory system gets affected nowadays a lot with coronavirus, but before that, our respiratory systems, they got ill and they got diseased by a lot of other things. And I'm talking, of course, about
Pollution and
Pneumonia.
that.
exactly. I'm talking about pollution. Uh, the cities we live in, and even Saltillo more and more, because we're surrounded by mountains. If you look at Monterrey, sometimes if you arrive from Saltillo to Monterrey, if you talk about Mexico City, any big city in Mexico, I mean, the air is of particularly bad quality. And in Mexico, the big amount of people, they live in cities, and our respiratory systems, they are highly affected by the quality of the air that we breathe because of the quality of the cars and especially buses and trailers, trucks that we have. And if you take into account also the industry, in fact, the life expectancy of the average Mexican is highly affected because of respiratory disorders as well. So my introduction for today is, I want to do, maybe you already got it by WhatsApp, but in fact, it's a good exercise. Um, I'm going to show you a video, and please put on your camera so you can see if you have a healthy lungs. Okay, it doesn't tell you for 100% sure if you have healthy lungs or not, but it's a nice thing to do. So put your cameras on, and I'm going to play the video and try to do this together with me. Okay. So basically, you're going to do what the video says. You're going to breathe in, you're going to hold your breath, and you're going to breathe out. Okay, it's very simple. I think some of you might have seen that already. Can you see the video? Let's start.
Yes.
1, 2, 3. Okay, let's start. Okay.
Mister,
Yes.
do you want to know my record of how long have I?
Holding your breath. Tell me.
Yeah.
How long is it?
1 minute and 40 seconds.
Ah, that's okay. Um, it's good that you train yourself in this, but be careful because if you hold your if you go too much into um, in lack of oxygen, you can start damaging a little bit your brain cells. So it's not it's okay, you can do that, but you have to do the proper training. Okay, so
Yes, sir.
never let your body go without oxygen because then it could be bad for the cells. uh, if you like that a lot, Emilio, I really recommend you a movie from the 80s, which is about free diving, and it's called The Big Blue. I think it's a very nice movie. It's about people that can hold their breath for a long time, and they dive without bottles to really incredible depths of more than 100 meters. It's a movie with Jean Reno and somebody else. It's really it's a long movie, but it's very nice. I don't know if you like it, but it's fun. It's fun.
It's,
I really, it's a movie from that I saw when I was younger, and I still think about it, because I am very passionate about it. I mean, I
I
can.
think I have heard about it. Like it's about some, in- well, in a coast where people have like 70 meters or 60 meters of 60 feet, sorry, of of depth or something like that.
Yeah. It's a very good movie. Yeah. If you like movies, then I really recommend you to watch it. It's romantic. It's adventurous. It's moving. It's emotional. It's connection with the sea. It's really lovely. Okay, so yeah, let's have a look at this respiratory system. In fact, so I'm going to show you introduction video about how respiration works, and then let's have a look at the parts a little bit. It's quite simple, the respiratory system. It's just two lungs, trachea, the mouth, and some muscles around it that make you breathe. Some people think that the lungs have muscles. The lungs have no muscles, guys. It's our thorax that moves in order to breathe in. The lungs itself, they cannot move. Okay, so let's have a look at this to introduce the subject.
The respiratory system moves air through the nose, pharynx, larynx, trachea, and bronchus to the alveoli where the gas exchange between oxygen and carbon dioxide occurs. Nares are the openings to the nose. The nasal cavity is lined with cilia, mucous membranes, and blood capillaries. The air is filtered by cilia, moistened by mucous membranes, and warmed by the blood. Air moves into the pharynx or throat, the common passageway for food and air. Air continues on to the larynx. The epiglottis, a flap of tissue in front of the larynx, closes off the larynx when swallowing to prevent food from entering. The larynx or voice box contains the vocal folds. The trachea or windpipe connects the larynx to the bronchial tree. The cartilage rings of the trachea prevent the trachea from collapsing. Lungs are spongy tissue with alveoli and blood capillaries. Breathing occurs because of the expansion and contraction of the lungs. The bronchi carrying the air subdivide into smaller branches called bronchioles. At the end of each bronchiole are the alveolar sacs. The alveolar sacs are surrounded by blood capillaries and contain millions of single-layer alveoli cells where the gas exchange takes place. Oxygenated air goes from the nose to the pharynx, larynx, trachea, bronchus, and alveoli. By the process of diffusion, oxygen in the air moves from the alveoli to the capillaries. Carbon dioxide moves from the capillaries to the alveoli and is exhaled. This process is called respiration.
Mister, you're muted.
The presentation you find in Canvas is also really good. You basically find all the information, the same information than we have in my presentation. Um, so you can consult both. In fact, they're both really good. Okay. So we can divide a little bit the respiratory system in two parts. We have the upper respiratory system right here, and then the lungs and the bronchi with the lower respiratory system. What is very, very important, guys, and a lot of students, they forget that. And I really want to stress that. Why do we need oxygen, guys? Think about last semester. What you all know that we breathe in oxygen and we breathe out CO2, like it says here. But please remind me, why do we need oxygen? What is
Energy.
To allow for combustion in the mitochondria, I'm gonna say.
Okay, yeah, almost. Anna Paul, tell me, please.
I mean, everything needs oxygen, but like muscles need oxygen, blood needs to transport the oxygen so everything can work and so and so.
Yeah, that's all correct. But I want to know, what is the body doing with the molecule of oxygen? Why does every cell needs the oxygen molecule? So please think more the direction Santiago was.
Rhinocytosis.
Sorry?
Rhinocytosis, or like an exchange of when the cells take the gases through the membrane.
It allows us to get energy.
Yeah, didn't the oxygen interact with the ATP to create energy?
Yeah, you're all there and not. So this oxygen is converted into what?
CO2?
No, Anapa, it's not converted into CO2, because where's
Glucose.
No, where's the CO2 coming from that you breathe out?
Cellular respiration.
Very good, Isabella. This CO2 that you breathe out, it doesn't come from the oxygen you breathe in. The CO2 you breathe out, it comes basically from the cellular respiration, the breakdown of glucose. Okay, that's where it comes from. And the oxygen, think what happens with the oxygen when we talk about cellular respiration. The oxygen will be converted into H2O. Okay, it will capture the electrons of the electron transport chain in the mitochondria in order to make them harmless. So if you don't have oxygen, in fact, those electrons of the electron transport chain, they have no place to go, and they will destroy the cell. They will destroy the mitochondria, and then they will destroy the cell. And that's why you die without oxygen, because the cellular respiration produced free electrons through the electron transport chain, what we have seen in Fundamentals of Life. If they have nowhere to go, you suffocate. Basically, the cell destroys and it has nowhere to go. The process of cellular respiration basically stops. Okay, and that's the problem. And this CO2, maybe I can quickly show that, because I think it's important if I have an image somewhere to remind you really why we breathe. Okay. Any quick picture from yeah, I should go in my stuff of last semester. I don't find a nice picture immediately. Yeah, anyway, I check it in the Fundamentals of Life material you still have, because I don't want to lose a lot of time. But anyway, remember that, okay? Think about cellular respiration. Remember that it produces, the breakdown of glucose produces free electrons. The glucose produces CO2, okay? Some of the oxygen is reduced to CO2, but the oxygen is not really needed to make CO2, okay? The CO2 is nothing that our body needs. Why we need the oxygen is in fact to combine it with hydrogen molecules, and they capture the electrons to form water. That's why we need oxygen. Okay, So like you have seen in the video, we have our mouth, our head. In fact, we have the nasal cavity. It's quite big, this nasal cavity. Um, you have to keep it healthy, you have to keep it clean, because sometimes if you sneeze and it smells bad, then it means that there is bacteria in it. Okay. In fact, when you sneeze, it should not have a strong smell, because then it means that this nasal cavity might have bacteria, which is often the case if you have a cold or something. So we can breathe in through the nose and we can breathe in through the mouth. Why do you think there's two ways we can breathe?
If one fails,
Yeah, exactly. The nose can get clogged or whatever. It's a security measure. We can breathe through the mouth. It all happens to us that our nose is full of mucus and we cannot breathe anymore. And then fortunately, we have our mouth and we can still keep on breathing. Imagine that would not be the case. Imagine you could not breathe through the mouth, then we would die very quickly, in fact, I think. Then we have the lower respiratory tract, which is basically the trachea and our lungs. Our lungs, as we see later, you can see it like an inverted tree a little bit. We go in a little bit more detail in a moment. And when we talk about the respiration process, you have to, it's very important, this slide, you have to distinguish the different kinds of respirations we have. So the first one, we call it pulmonary respiration. Basically, the pulmonary respiration is me breathing in and breathing out. Okay, that's pulmonary respiration. It's my lungs doing the job. Then you have the external respiration, which is the exchange of gases between the alveoli and the blood. So whenever the air goes through my nose into my lungs, the gases will be exchanged. Basically, oxygen goes inside my lungs and it's transported to the blood, and CO2 is removed from the blood and you breathe it out, okay? So that's the external respiration. It's still happening in the lungs. The internal respiration is happening all over the body, in the blood and the tissues, because this exchange of gases has to happen in your toe, it has to happen in your muscle, it has to happen in your heart, it has to happen in your brain, everywhere. So that's what internal respiration is. It's basically your organs, your tissues, everything of your body giving the CO2 to your blood and taking the oxygen from your blood. So take that into account and remember that when we arrive to the circulatory system, the blood is super important, because it's like we have seen in the digestive system, function of the blood is to move nutrients around to the tissues. Now, we have also seen in the immune system that the function of the blood is the first immune reaction. And now we see in the respiratory system that the blood as well is exchanging gases all over the body. So the blood is a very, very complex tissue. And like I said, remember, it's so complex that we cannot make artificial blood. That's why still blood transfusions and everything, because it's such a complicated liquid with so many very, very important functions that we cannot imitate this 100% on artificial level, okay? And then, of course, of last semester, it all ends up being cellular respiration, because all the gas exchange, the nutrients, everything, if you go on a microscopic level, it's the cells who do the exchange of all those things on a molecular level. Okay, this is what we have seen last semester, what that means exactly, this cellular respiration. Okay. So our nose is very important, because our nose has many functions as well. We use it for breathing, and you can see many noses here. I don't know which one you like more. It's a very genetic and a racial thing as well, because sorry?
You're not sharing screen.
I'm not sharing screen. Okay. Thanks, Cecilia. So here you have these slides of the different kinds of cellular of respirations: pulmonary, external, internal, and cellular. We just discussed that. And here you can see different kind of noses. I'm not sharing yet, Rena. Okay, here you can see the noses. Here, this is this slide. So noses are very interesting, because noses are a very individual thing. Each nose in the world is in fact different. Another nice thing about noses is that did you know that they keep on growing until you die? So that's why sometimes you don't recognize older people from the pictures when they were younger, because the noses, they keep on growing. That's why you have to be very careful. If you're not happy with your nose and you decide to operate it, it might look okay for several years, but then after a while it might seem a little bit out of proportion or a bit weird, because certain parts of the nose keep on growing, you know. So if you want to do a rhinoplasty, you can do it, but I would always wait as much as possible, because in fact your nose, if you start changing things, then of course you have scar tissue, and it might be a bit weird. But of course the nose operation have improved a lot. Basically what they do is they cut here, they remove everything, they remove a little bit the bone, and they pull it all back. I have a friend it's a girl who recently got like a nose operation because she had a really big nose and she didn't like it, and it looks okay for now. So noses are very racial, very cultural, no, not cultural, but very depending on the races. So if you look at birth, especially if you think about French people, they often have big noses. Turkish people, they also have bigger noses, and then Asian people, they have smaller noses. Italians also have a little bit bigger noses. It really depends from country to country, you know. Um, Okay, that's what the nose is. And let's have a look at the functions of the nose. So sometimes you operations, like I said, it can happen when they have a deviated nasal septum. So many people say like, no, I got the operation because I have a deviated nasal septum, but it's not always the case. In fact, if you have this, it's not always possible to see it from the outside. So what is a deviated nasal septum? Is basically that the cartilage is not fully straight, and that somehow it blocks the entrance, and it might cause some difficulties breathing. This is very important, guys, because maybe I'm not sharing. Please let me know, what are some functions of the nose? Because it's not only breathing. Tell me.
Like protecting, it's a body cavity, so it like stops some bacteria from getting in.
Yeah, for sure, I agree, because you have hairs in the nose, you have mucus. It protects your lungs from invading bacteria, for sure. One function. Imagine that I ask 5 functions of the nose. Who can give me 5? So it protects you from invading bacteria. It's definitely true.
Like releasing bacteria that you have in the body by sneezing and things like that, or that's more the mouth.
Yeah, you sneeze, but that's not really, I don't, yeah. In fact, yes, why not? Sneezing is a reflex when there is something in your body to expulse it with force because your body doesn't want it. So yeah, fine, Santiago, I accept it. Number 3.
To smell.
Yeah, of course, Ana Sofia, really well. You use your nose for smelling. And why do we smell?
For example, in food to know if it's like bad or something.
Yeah, very good. It protects, it's also a protection mechanism for our digestive system and also for our respiratory system. It warns us if something is not okay. Bad smells are always indicating a little bit of danger or not really good for us, okay? A very important function indeed, the smell. In fact, smell is something interesting because it's one of our most ignored senses. We do everything to satisfy our eyes. We have the nicest televisions. We do everything to look beautiful and whatever. We build houses in a way that they're pleasing to the eyes and all these kind of things. We make music. We do everything for the ear. But in fact, we don't do so much for the nose. Okay, you can go to a perfume shop and that's basically it. We don't treat our nose really. I mean, it's not the sense that is really that much taken care of as vision and listening and smelling and tasting. Okay, so our nose indeed, it smells and it tastes. What else is it doing?
It
So
warms
Taking
air
air.
before entering.
Yeah, okay, very good, Anna Sophia. It warms and it moistures the air before entering in our body because otherwise it might affect our lungs. I don't know if you have gone once in your life to a really, really cold place, but basically it's not a good idea that your lungs start freezing with really cold air because your lungs are a very humid tissue. And in fact, your lungs, they can freeze. If you go to the north of Russia in the winter, people cannot come outside because their lungs, they would freeze. And if the lungs, they freeze, in fact you start to bleed internally. It's really bad. So in fact, um, for humans, you should not be outside with temperatures that are colder than -15, -20 is already very serious. It can be dangerous. Okay, in fact, I know all about it because I had the great idea to camp with my friends in the mountains of Czech Republic in February, and it was -22, and we were sleeping in a tent, and our eyes would freeze. You need to cover your face. It was the coldest night of my life, without any doubt. It -22, sleeping outside. It's very cold, guys. I can tell you. You have to be very careful that not everything freezes. Even the mocos in the nose, they freeze. You really have to cover your face. You cannot take this lightly, and you have to go with special equipment, like a thing to cover your whole face, because otherwise you are at serious risk. Um, Okay, the nose and the nasal cavity, it's also to lighten the skull. Imagine that we also have sinus here, which we'll see in a moment. Imagine that the whole nasal cavity would be boned and our head would weigh even way more. So it would be too heavy. Um, Another thing that our nose is very important for is resonance. If our nose is wouldn't be there, we would not be able to generate sounds. Okay, think about it. When your nose is clogged, then you talk a little bit like this, and it doesn't sound really great because it's the resonance in the nasal cavity that makes us speak properly. Really, try to talk like this. I mean, you can still hear me, but it sounds a bit weird, right? That's because there is no resonance. That's another important function. Contributes to facial growth and resonance. And another thing that is not mentioned here, guys, the nose is very, very important in detecting pheromones. Okay. What are pheromones? Pheromones are a chemical produced by every individual, and it makes you match with somebody. Okay, even if you think that the person is the most handsome or the most pretty girl in the world, if your pheromones do not match, you will leave each other. It's really something that's been ignored by science for a long time. But if you don't, if you're not compatible with pheromones and smells, then you cannot be a couple. It's really, really important. Okay, sometimes you hear that why now we don't belong together, and you don't know why. It has often to do with pheromones. Pheromones, they have to be compatible. Okay, in order to match with your pareja, in fact. Okay, and you know that if you match or not, because if you like somebody's smell, then you're probably okay. If you don't feel comfortable with somebody, or you dislike somebody's smell, then that may be a really problem on the long run, because it will be difficult to be together, even if you don't think it is. Another function is the nose eye connection. So you know that our eyes, they produce tears. The tears, they go to the little coin right here, and then there is a tube going into our nasal cavity, where the tears go basically into our nasal cavity in our pharynx, and we swallow it. Okay. I don't know if you've seen those videos on YouTube, but there is people that can drink milk, and then they can close the nose, and they can make like a little chorrito coming from the eye. I've never tried that. I don't want to try it, but it's proof that this connection exists. Okay. Sometimes that's the same reason when you eat chili, or when you eat something very spicy, or onions, or something that is irritating, that sometimes you start having tears. It's because the smell and the substances of the food can go through this channel and start to irritate the eyes. Okay, just to know that this connection exists. Okay, I'm going really fast, the sinus, because it's really not that important, but our skull is full with holes. Okay, you can see that here on these cuts. So basically, this is a sagittal cut, this is a coronal cut. Here you have another coronal cut, and here another one. Basically, what you see is these cavities. These cavities, they have names: ethmoidal, maxillary, frontal, and sphenoidal. Basically, these cavities, they exist to lighten our skulls, but they're also a problem because if you're really ill, they might become filled with mucus and pus and everything, and that's the horrible pressure you feel when you have the flu or you have a cold and you feel the pressure here and here and everything hurts, your head hurts. It's because these sinuses, they might be filled with bacteria and with pus and with mucus and all of these kind of things, which creates pressure, and this pressure gives you headache. Okay, the best thing you can do is go to a steam bath. You can use like what they call sterimar. The salty water also removes it a little bit, but by removing this stuff from those sinuses, you often feel a lot lighter and a lot better. Okay, so here you have another ones. If it gets infected, you have an illness which we call sinusitis. Have you heard of that? It's basically bacteria filling those cavities. Okay, you can get rid of it with antibiotics. It's a small inflammation of those areas. People, they can also have it because of allergies, you know, that if you breathe in a lot of pollen or cat hair or whatever, it can create a little bit of nuisance and inflammation in those areas, creating even more pus and creating more discomfort. Okay. So that's the functions of our respiratory system. We have said we have the ventilation, the phonation, you know, the phonation is generation of sound and words. We have said that. And then, of course, the ventilation is the most important one, which is breathing in and breathing out. Okay, but don't forget all the rest, which is smell and lightening the skull. This is also important functions. Okay. Okay. A little word about this smelling. Okay. So basically, we have here the olfactory bulb, which is the nerve that connects to your brain. In fact, if we look in the brain and we look to the smell, this is our most primitive sense of them all. In fact, it's one of the most simple and the most primitive smells. And like I said, you can see that here. It's immediately connected, the olfactory neuroepithelium, with the olfactory nerves. It's immediately connected. Here is the head, and it's connected with the thalamus, with the hypothalamus and the amygdala. And this area is like the brain stem, we call that. And it's like the most primitive part of the brain. And that's why I said that the smell is often ignored. I mean, us scientists, we always try to think about things like, we're conscient about it and let's see what it means. But basically, this is connected to a very primitive part of the brain, just like cows, just like dogs, just like any very simple mammal. And it's super important because it does things with the brain that we don't fully understand yet. And of course, it has a lot to do with primitive functions, you know. Primitive functions is the function of danger, of smelling food, and of finding a pair, so reproducing. Okay, so whenever if you don't understand why dogs are smelling each other in weird places and stuff, it has all to do with this very primitive function of our respiratory system and our nose. Okay. Like I said, this is a very important image because you can see here the lungs, and this is the thorax. Okay, usually we make a lung bottle in the class, but we are not in the class, but I let students make a bottle with a balloon, and then they can see how our lungs work. But it's important here to see that our lungs, they don't have any muscles. This green line, what would it be, guys?
The diaphragm?
Yeah, the diaphragm. It's indeed the diaphragm and the muscles, the intercostal muscles between our ribs that make our thorax become bigger and smaller. And that is what causes us to the lungs to inflate and deflate. So the lungs itself, remember that they do not have muscles. Yeah, go ahead, Emilio.
Mr. I have a question.
Yes.
So The diaphragm is the part that makes the los pulmones to breathe. So the diaphragm is automatic, or are the lungs automatic?
No, the diaphragm is a muscle that is controlled by our autonomous nervous system. Okay, so it's something that you cannot voluntarily control. There is a voluntarily function, because I mean, I could say I'm going to breathe faster. This is something you can do, but try. I mean, I know it's impossible. So I all invite you to commit suicide right now by stopping to breathe. And I just do it because it's impossible.
Va, profe, ahí vengo.
No, but seriously, it's impossible to commit suicide by telling I stop breathing. There is like small children doing that, like, I'm not breathing anymore.
But like it has happened with children that they like finish in the hospital because they didn't breathe, and they need to take them just because of a berrinche.
Ah, really? Yeah, but then they get, I mean, it probably a stress factor, but you can seriously, Ana Pao, you cannot kill yourself by saying, okay, I just stop breathing, you know, when you have a pharynx. It's really not possible. It's scientifically proven. And that's why I tell you, because I know you cannot kill yourself. And Andale, Ana Pao, do suicide, stop breathing. You cannot, because it's controlled by a function of the brain that doesn't allow to stop you breathing. It's not possible. I'm not saying if you put a bag around your head.
I'll try it tonight, teacher.
Yeah, okay, go ahead. And see you tomorrow, because it's impossible. Okay. So it's our diaphragm that is controlled by this. You cannot stop breathing. Okay, it's impossible. And I do agree, Ana Pao, don't tell it to children, because I mean, if they might get, if you do it a long time, you might become a little bit without oxygen, or it's not really good thing to do. Okay. So we have our diaphragm and our intercostal muscles that do the breathing. In fact, you have them right here. The chest expands. So basically, that's important when you breathe in. You know, there's a lot of people that breathe in and they make the belly smaller. It's wrong. Correct breathing is that the belly goes out, not goes inside the body. You know, the belly has to bulb. It has to go a little bit outside so that the diaphragm can lower and the lungs can fill properly with air. So I invite you to check that. If you breathe in, I mean, I'm not the best person because I'm too skinny to see that. But if you breathe out, yeah, you don't even see that, especially not when I'm breathing black, when I'm wearing black. But if you breathe in, basically your belly has to go a little bit to the front. Okay, when you breathe out, then the belly should go in. And a lot of people, they breathe in the wrong way because of that. Okay. I'm just gonna talk a little bit about the larynx before, because then tomorrow we can go to the other parts. The larynx, basically, it's a very important part, because this is right here what we have, men, boys, we have that right here. And it's made of cartilage. I mean, I invite you to check your trachea. Here's the larynx. We have the vocal cords right there. We have 4 vocal cords, okay? And if you look to your trachea, you see that you have like these cartilage rings. Feel it, guys. Check it here. Can you feel that it's like ripped? Yeah, it has like,
yes, sir.
This rings of cartilage. Why do you think it has rings of cartilage?
So it can move without like getting damaged, the bone.
No, it's just that the tube stays open, and it's so important, our trachea, our wind tube, that it cannot collapse. Imagine that somebody pushes or it gets infected and it closes. It's not a good idea. There is like cartilage in it just to make sure that it's a solid, strong tube that cannot close itself, because once it closes, it's all gone. That's why you have to be very careful and not swallow bees by accident, because if it stings you right there, it swells and it closes on the inside. It's very dangerous, okay?
Teacher, I have a question. Why, when you cry, does it feel like your throat closes up? Like when you start crying and you start feeling like your throat starts like closing up. Why does that happen? I just thought of it when you said it couldn't
Uh-huh.
close. Like,
It has to do with the coordination of breathing and the muscles. So in fact, when you're upset about something, it destroys a little bit the balance and the rhythm of your breathing and the muscles, and then it starts to feel like a ball in the throat because not the things are not coordinated anymore, and it takes you a while to relax and to body to reinitiate and to relax so that everything is back in balance and in equilibrium. So when you're upset, sometimes you breathe wrong, and at the same time you swallow and it goes to the wrong side, so it's everything gets a little bit out of coordination. That's why you feel that. Okay. And at the same time there is like all kind of secretions happening, like tears and mucus in the nose, and that keeps to even make it worse, it might keep on clogging those areas a little bit. So yeah, it all happens to us. It all happened to us. We all know that feeling, that when you're really stressed out about something, or somebody makes you cry, or you have a very emotional situation, that all of a sudden everything blocks and you feel very uncomfortable. That's just because all the systems that have to be coordinated, they stop being coordinated together. You have smooth muscles that get contracted, you have secretions, you have things that are not coordinated anymore. So all of that combines to that effect that you have. Okay, I think it's enough for today, guys. Let's keep the lower respiratory system for tomorrow. So it's very simple. We will look at the inverted tree, we will look at the gas exchange, and then we will have a look at the how to say it, the most important diseases of the respiratory system. In fact, I prepared a video that I want to finish with. It's only 2 minutes. What happens when what happens to your respiratory system with coronavirus? I think it's very important you have a look at this. It's only 2 minutes, and maybe we can discuss this in further detail tomorrow. And when we see the lower respiratory system, you will understand in a more profound way what really happens with this coronavirus. And we have to address it because it's really hot news right now. And the better you know what happens, the better we can protect ourselves.
When you breathe, air flows in through your mouth and nose and down your airways. Inside your lungs, the airways end in clusters of air-filled sacs. These air sacs are surrounded by tiny blood vessels. Here, oxygen from your lungs passes into your bloodstream to get to tissues throughout your body. Carbon dioxide is breathed out. COVID-19 is a disease
that's what we have seen
caused by a virus called SARS-CoV-2. The virus infects cells along your airways by attaching to ACE2 and other molecules on those cells. The virus uses ACE2 as a door to get inside of the cells and make more copies of itself.
She's
The
talking
virus
about the
and
cells
your
of your
immune
lungs,
system's
the
reaction
alveoli.
to it, inflammation, damages the air sacs, causing them to scar and stiffen or fill with fluid. This blocks some oxygen from passing from your lungs into your bloodstream. As blood oxygen levels fall, you may feel short of breath. In severe cases, a ventilator or other support may be needed. Inflammation helps our bodies fight infection, but in some people with COVID-19, it seems to go into overdrive. Researchers think this may be due to the fact that the virus latches on to the ACE2 molecule in order to get into cells. ACE2 helps reduce inflammation, and this effect is lost when the virus occupies it. The result is that inflammation can go awry. NHLBI-funded research over decades has helped us understand ACE2, its role in inflammation, and how it is hijacked by the virus. NHLBI is also supporting new studies, including clinical trials, focused on developing safe and effective treatments for people infected with SARS-CoV-2. People with chronic lung, heart, or blood diseases may be at higher risk of severe illness from COVID-19. We should all take steps to help protect ourselves and others from infection by washing hands often, avoiding crowded places, wearing a mask, and staying at least 6 feet away from other people. Visit our website for the latest.
Okay, so tomorrow we will definitely talk about coronavirus in a more big, profound way. But anyway, I really want you to know already that this coronavirus, it's a nasty thing, you know, because people die of it. It's a painful and a scary death, and it's not something we can take lightly. We will not see in detail how it all works, but it's important that you know a little bit how it affects the lungs. Okay, so more about all of illnesses and more about lungs tomorrow. And have a very nice day, everybody.
Thank you,
Thanks,
teacher.
Mr. Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you,
Bye.
teacher.